Brand new season, brand new dawn for Box. And it's lights out and away we go.
Simply lovely. I was really enjoying that last.
We are back with another episode of Box. And this week, we're saying farewell to the 2023 Formula One season and reviewing the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And I'm not going to lie, the final race of 2023 season was a little lackluster. I was a little bored. And for the first time this season, I almost chose sleep over watching the entirety of a race. And if you know me or have been watching my content for a while, you know that is not something that I take lightly, especially considering that there wouldn't be another race for 97 days. So that was, if you need any context as to how bad this race, if you need any context as to how bad or how boring this race was, that's it. But everything aside, this weekend in Abu Dhabi, we said goodbye to Franz Tost, the longtime team principal at AlphaTauri, the man who pioneered and upheld the Red Bull Junior team for many a year. And he fostered the early careers of many drivers currently on and off the grid, including Max, Danny, Albano, Pierre, Carlos, Yuki, Liam. So many. Anyway, let's not get too sad. Let's get into it, shall we? Breaking down the teams. Red Bull. Max continuing to do what he does best, qualifying on pole and then converting, backing it up on Sunday for his 19th win of the season. He may have already won the championship, but he ain't slowing down. Checo's form seems to have slightly improved. Again, it's probably nowhere where the team would want him to be in qualifying though, given that he, started in P9. I mean, he did finish in P2, so they did end the season the same way that they started it. But thanks to Checo's collision with Lando, he got a 5-second time penalty. So he may have finished P2, but his official classification at the end of the race was P4. So no podium celebrations for him in Abu Dhabi. But either way, the team finished their record-breaking season in style and undoubtedly partied the same way. On to Mercedes. Look, they held off Ferrari to secure P2 in the Constructors' Championship, thanks to George's podium. So he came good. I think it was his first and only podium of the season. I could be wrong on that one. Lewis was knocked out in Q2 for the second week in a row and managed to gain only 2 positions for a P9 finish, securing the team 2 points. P2 in the championship was touch and go for a significant amount of the race, with the live championship ladder frequently interchanging between them and Ferrari. This also called for some heated words between George and his engineer, wanting to know how things were going and not getting the answer that he had apparently hoped for when asking a very roundabout question. Ferrari's entire participation in Abu Dhabi this weekend was in doubt, with the team seeking compensation from F1 for the unexpected yet extensive damages to Carlos Sainz's car that he picked up in Las Vegas. Respect that they are trying to get compensation for the shit show and the additional use of parts and the inconvenience and the unfair repercussions and that they suffered as a result of the track not being secured in an adequate manner. But on the other hand, stating that the unexpected costs and use of parts could prevent them from travelling to Abu Dhabi? Come on, Ferrari. Yes, we're in the days of a cost cap, but how have you not planned and prepped enough parts? Are your drivers only allowed to crash a certain number of times per season? And if they exceed that, then their season's done? Even if it's not their fault and it's a reliability issue? Then Ferrari stated that if anything happens to either of their cars in Abu Dhabi, they may not have the parts to fix it. But then Carlos crashed out in FP2 and they repaired the car. The whole thing to me just does not make sense. And yes, I'll concede that while they fixed the car, there were subsequent significant performance issues. But who's to say that wouldn't otherwise have happened? Like, let's take out the whole Las Vegas debacle from the equation. Who's to say that if nothing happened to Carlos in that race and they came to Abu Dhabi only for him to put it in the wall in FP2, that they wouldn't have had the same performance issues or the parts able to fix the car? But everything was to play for them this weekend. And them banking their strategy on the possibility of a safety car, refusing to pit Carlos for his second stop until the very last lap, tanking his race with the high tyre deg, only to then retire him before he crossed the line on the last lap. Like, it was just such a typical Ferrari weekend. Charles was doing more for the team strategy from the cockpit of his car in P2 than the pit wall have done all season. Ferrari only managed to keep P3 in the constructors because of strategy calls from their drivers. The pit wall get no credit whatsoever. It was an average performance from the team, which is not really surprising given their history. It was a horrifying quali for Carlos, who qualified in P16. But Charles put his car on the front row in P2. So, just a typical overall Ferrari weekend in Abu Dhabi. On to McLaren. Oscar qualified third in Abu Dhabi, and a mistake in quali saw Lando start in P5. Lando maintained his position for a P5 finish, while Oscar unfortunately dropped 3 places for a P6 finish. And despite the positional losses, Oscar did have some incredible overtakes throughout the race, including a DR special of a double overtake. So props to the Aussies for copying each other. Lando was on for a higher finish for a good chunk of the race until Checo decided he didn't really want to turn his car fully and crashed into him while trying to put it up the inside, and then had the audacity to blame Lando. I think he's been taking some lessons from George because he was in the wrong and thought everyone else was. So make it make sense. But anyway, Lan did a great job and Checo lost his podium. So it is what it is. The points haul that they secured this weekend allowed them to secure 4th place in the championship ahead of Aston Martin, which I reiterate again is a significant improvement on their early season prospects. I had them pegged for a P10 finish after testing. So, ideally, not the way they probably would have wanted to end the season, but it probably could have been so much worse. They could have been where they were at the beginning of the season. Aston Martin. Alonso qualified P7, and Stroll-Polly qualified in P13. Alonso managed to maintain his P7, and Stroll-Polly rounded out the points in P10. While they did have a double points haul, they didn't make any real significant inroads into closing the gap and regaining P4 in the championship, which is realistically a significant decline in their early season prospects, and probably not where they would have pegged themselves to be at this point, particularly at the beginning of the season. But it was, however, one of their best races in quite some time. Alpine. It was another precarious race for the French duo, and their obvious dislike and disdain for each other was once again made very apparent on team radio. Nevertheless, Pierre Gasly qualified in P10, out-qualifying his teammate Esteban Ocon, who managed P12. Esti managed to maintain his P12 position, but Gasly conceded 3 positions for a P13 finish. I think ultimately tyre wear seemed to be a significant issue for them, particularly for Pierre, who seemingly struggled with it more than Esteban, as seen in his 3-place loss across the race. But honestly, this is just typical of their entire season. Disappointing, but not surprising. With a hint of drama, Netflix is going to eat up. So that's all I really have to say about them. Although they did get more screen time this weekend, because they did something. Williams. Logan, honestly, he showed what he was capable of in that Williams this weekend. But track limits reared their little heads. And unfortunately, a track limits violation meant that he didn't get to keep his times. And those times equaled that of the Red Bull, the McLaren, the Mercedes, and the Ferrari. But because of that deletion, he qualified 20th, which is not what he wanted on what was potentially his final race in Formula One. Alex, on the other hand, qualified P14 and maintained that to finish in P14. Across the race, Logan managed to gain 4 positions. I actually think that's probably one of the most gains that he's had in a race, for a P16 finish. While neither scored points, which was potentially troublesome for the team, given their close battle with AlphaTauri. But nevertheless, they came out in P7 in the Constructors, so props to them. AlphaTauri. Yuki did his best to try and claim P7 for the team, but ultimately, dodgy strategy let them both down. Yuki's highest career qualifying position of P6 came this weekend, while DR did manage to make it to Q2 and qualified in 15th. DR went on to gain 4 positions to narrowly miss out on the points in 11th place, while Yuki conceded 2 places for a P8 finish. It's unlikely the result that they were hoping for in France's final race, but they gave it their best shot, and I'm sure France was pleased knowing that they gave it their all until the very end of the season. I mean, Yuki was up there in P6 with enough points to get them in front of Williams, but ultimately they just didn't have the legs to get there. So disappointing, but hopefully come 2024, improvements are in sight. Alfa Romeo. This team just... I don't know why they show up sometimes. Bottas and Zhou qualified P18 and 19, respectively. They have so much potential, but they just don't. Bottas lost a position and finished the race in 19th, while Zhou finished in P17 after making up 2 positions. I wish he made up 17 positions. Otherwise, I don't really know what else to say about them. They're kind of just making up the numbers at this point. Their development has not been on par with everyone else this season, and I genuinely don't feel like I saw them at all on track during the race. They were very good in 2022, and they were competitive in the midfield. So it is disappointing to see them decline so rapidly across the 2023 season to finish in 9th in the Constructors. So here's to hoping that 2024 brings some changes that are well needed to both the team and the car, because if they can't drive it, what can we really expect? Haas. Well, Hulk put the car in the wall just after turn 1, just after the conclusion of a red flag from Carlos's incident in FP3, which caused a headache for the team. K-Mag had another horrible qualifying, only managing P17, and he was once again out-qualified by Hulkenberg, who, despite having that incident in free practice, managed P8. But as always, they went backwards in the race, with Hulk conceding 7 positions and finishing in P15. K-Mag also conceded 3 positions for a P20 finish. I've said it once, and I will say it again. Their single lap pace has potential, but their race pace just isn't it. And if they want to be competitive and improve in 2024, they need to fix it, and they need to fix it urgently. Otherwise, bottom of the table it is for them again. Otherwise, nothing else really much to say about them. That was Abu Dhabi, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, all the fun things, and I'll catch you in the next one.